Okay, good evening. We are back from our break, and give me just a moment of grace here to pull up my agenda. My apologies. Okay, so I'm going to call to order our regular meeting, and the first item is we need to approve the agenda, and I would like to move that we approve the agenda with the amendment of adding an executive session as our first item of business for the purpose of discussing a student matter. So I'm going to make that motion.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, we have approved our agenda. All right, so I will make the motion for executive session. I move the Board of Education recess to executive session to discuss confidential student information pursuant to the exception relating to actions adversely or favorably affecting a student under coma, with the following invited to be present: Dr. Stubblefield, David Cunningham, and Julie Boyle. And the board will return to open session in this room at 10 minutes or 15 minutes?
15.
Okay, at 7:20 with possible action to follow.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Oh, hey, guys, board members, we need to go around this way, sorry. Okay. Hey, you guys, sorry.
Something came up, I didn't have to come back out.
Are you afraid I'll say something?
All this time, I didn't know that was you sitting over here. I saw you walk by, and I was like, that's not, I didn't know you still live in Florence.
Yeah, but I've been back probably about almost 15 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I was like, well, I don't see a lot of the same people all the time. I guess you get caught in the same routine.
That's true.
So when I saw you just now, I was like, wait a minute, you've been up there this whole time, and I've been coming, like, it's like,
How are you doing?
good, good, good. I work with this lady who's Right, I think her friend is, no, it's not her relative, it's her friend. Are you married to her friends?
I don't know. I'm married to,
He's from Adams.
yes.
Then that must be it.
Because his whole family's from Addison and they're like related to
I
everybody.
can't remember if that's her friend or I relative.
Right.
I don't even know her. I don't even know. You could ask him.
I'm probably just
I've listened to her stories enough. I should have remembered. I can't remember her relative.
like R-I-F-E?
Reiff.
That name does sound familiar. Wait. Is she a nurse?
Her daughter is. Her daughter's in nursing school, but she was a teacher.
And she's from Addison?
And they're originally from California.
Yeah. Her one of his good friends. I don't remember. The name kind of sounds familiar.
Keep up with your text. Because I can't even remember her relationship. Just like story. And then you just walk by and I was like,
What? I do see her. That's awesome. They're in executive session, talking about something I think the student really matter.
that's what I was saying. I was like, well, it's like, right when we got here, and I looked at it and I was like,
You know, with all this stuff that's going on, they just decided, we've worked really hard to get all the buildings have secure entrances. But this building is not. Anyone can just come in
see, that's how I
anytime.
feel about my work. I mean, I worked in less secure buildings that needed less security, and it's like you always think about the outlying things first, but never like It's home central.
Exactly. I think with just everything that's been going on, they were like, okay, we need to make sure we take care of this building too, because we have people here late at night and different things. So now we have security guards, or the police will be here. I think some boarding tonight. So whenever we have late meetings, and they're working on getting like secure entrances, because we don't have one actually any. Work on putting at least the doorbell. And hopefully we'll have like the same security. And that kind of, yeah.
That thing, I was like,
Exactly.
I don't want overkill. You gotta just kind of.
Let's at least get this building up to speed with all the other buildings as well.
Different
So,
age, isn't it?
yeah, it is.
People could have done like that.
Yeah, and it's crazy. Times are just so different. People are just so different.
Different mindset. You can't even
Wow.
let kids play outside.
Not knowing. It's different. It's like, yeah, we were just like, when we were little, you know, girls like, the lights come on. No, it's like, and now it's like, where are you going?
Have your phone on.
Right.
You don't answer me when I call you, I'm coming to get you.
Exactly.
Let's get talking. Good.
All up or not? But he would love to shop. And district needs to pay to go. Right, yeah. Yes, you did. No, don't scratch a thing every time you move something. But you're, and that just. I know. Or you didn't have it. They did. Updated. Yeah, I need to. Oh, good. Yes. Oh, I would love that. Now that's no, I know.
When they form out.
Oh,
Yes. Yes.
oh.
When it's ever occurred, that doesn't mean it's a lesson.
Yes, right, okay. That in the school. Right, okay, but now it could be in the school, right? But I'm just saying it would be, you don't have to say now, I mean, it's, oh, no, I didn't know. Right, yeah, it's good. Right, that's what I'm saying.
Kind of like Jimmy has like two veins up. If you want to do it without. 7:30.
That was before private prison. These are the two particular people from the outside. And that's never been, that's what I know. No, like I just saw her get that. I was in August. Well, June. Well, yeah, July. Well, yeah, July. And I was.
I was not, but I love you for that.
I'm just really starting. I have. This year I'm planning.
You're sorry.
I heard from Mr. Ross, you were kind of tough.
Well,
So it's a stereotype, yeah.
survivors about.
Yes,
You see, I've been a teacher for a long time
Green
too.
school.
Middle school.
Oh,
And elementary.
if you were middle school.
That's all right. My grandma lived there. Got in the one room schoolhouse for 4 years, and then they told her she had to go learn how to go back to school to learn how to do it.
I went to a one-room school. That says a lot, doesn't
Or
it?
in a normal school.
Well, I know there's,
right there on 275.
That's right.
Yeah, no, it's I grew up.
Oh, West Point is
Yes,
your.
West Point Bancroft Beamer. Had a Bancroft address, Beamer, phone, went to school in West Point.
Right. Paid for it, you swim. You wouldn't know that. So, you were actually a school teacher?
Was for a
Went
long
back
time.
and became a.
Yeah, went to the dark side.
That's unusual.
It's good to meet you, Mr. Ron.
Okay.
Thank you.
They look really good with your shirt and your dress, with your cap.
Oh, sure. Thank you. Oh, no, thank you.
Like 5 months.
Oh, I just ate before I came here.
Okay.
I know. But thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
She might need to.
Yeah, he's been out of town.
I was in San Antonio yesterday.
Yeah, we're gonna get something to eat up.
Going to lunch tomorrow, are we? Still?
Yeah, no matter, it's not open on Tuesday.
Oh, it's not? Okay.
Fix your spot.
Okay.
Let me check the calendar.
Oh, that's nice.
My family was out of town. I was like,
Oh, really? Dude, I'm gonna sit here and watch TV, dude, that's
go watch cheerleading. This report should be Netflix, maybe that's pretty good. Buyers watches the movie Heat.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I watched that. I know it's one of those, I was like, I was in college together, I was drinking. Saturday night.
They all move our cameras.
Not yet. I'm just supposed to check it out.
I would say you have no idea what you're signing. Well, that's all of our contracts also at work, DocuSign. I just.
It's written out there on the sign.
I want
There might be a way I can get a nurse practitioner. So I can but I'm not work anymore. Just take care of me. I know. Stay at home. Grandfather. I work here.
You do the microphone reminder.
And I think I moved mine earlier, so.
Keep touching mine.
My phone for PowerPoint.
One you can throw a chair out of. I'm gonna try and pick this chair up. See if I can make it to the first row. If I pick it up and throw it.
I have left my phone in that room. Okay.
School Sunday, third
Day to grab it.
I just can't find it. I'll look later. Okay, we are back from our executive session. We have no action to take, so we will move on to the next item, which is the report of the president of the board. As just a point of information for board members, the IT staff has asked us to not move our microphones around and not try to talk directly into them, but sit back a little bit. I guess it would help with the sound from the meeting. So, okay. I want to share some stuff I've got. It was kind of long, and I apologize, but there's been a lot going on in the last month for the president's report. On March 13th, I attended a KASB board leadership team training in Topeka. Thank you to Jessica, Melissa, and Kelly, who all made the time that day to also attend the workshop, and we heard a lot of helpful strategies for effective leadership as current and future board officers. That Friday, the following Friday, on March 23rd, I had the opportunity to attend a meeting with Governor Collier and his staff, along with the KASB executive leadership team and advocacy teams to discuss school finance. I think that was helpful in gaining the governor's support for the school finance bill that ultimately passed this weekend. So we had a good talk about district needs, and I wanted to say thank you for the information that was provided on very short notice by district staff, and particularly Kathy Johnson, because I was able to use that to share some specifics about our funding needs in Lawrence and use that as an example of, to illustrate to the governor why a funding increase was so essential to continued operations and improvement for districts across the state. On Saturday, March 24th, I had the privilege of joining a group of Lawrence high school students, not just students from Lawrence High, but high school students in our community, and also community leaders to speak at the March for Our Lives in South Park to advocate for sensible state and federal policies to reduce gun violence and protect our students and faculty in our schools. We had a fantastic turnout. There were around 1,800 people who either came for the rally and stayed for the march. I wanted to especially recognize all the student and community organizers and leaders that put that event together, and particularly Diane Vina, who came to our meeting to share the information with us, because I know that without her pushing to organize that group wouldn't have come together and done that, so I really wanted to thank her for that. The board policy committee met on March 26th, and I didn't get a chance to ask if you wanted to talk about that. But we met, and we talked about the fundraising policy, we're probably going to push off just a little bit longer that coming back to the board. We wanted to give some additional time for feedback on the edits, because staff did a pretty substantial rewrite of the policy based on the first round of edits, and also put together a Q&A. So we worked through that and wanted to send it back out again. Dr. Lewis was in town and he gave an excellent talk introducing himself and his leadership vision to the Lawrence Board of Realtors and the Home Builders Association at their joint luncheon on March 27th. I was fortunate enough to attend, and I appreciate and thank Dr. Lewis for continuing to engage our community in advance of his July 1 start date. We had a facility planning meeting on April 3rd. GR and I did, and we have some things on the agenda tonight from that. We had our community conversation on April 3rd, and I won't go into detail about that in case other board members would like to touch on that one. And then this past Thursday, the 5th, through this afternoon, I had the good fortune to attend the National School Board Association's annual conference in San Antonio as part of the delegation from our state school board association. Being president-elect, I went as an alternate delegate for their delegate assembly, which is where the National Association adopts their policies and their belief statements every year. So I got to serve as an alternate delegate and take part in deliberations about proposed changes to add gender identity to the set of NSBA's anti-discrimination policies. I'm pleased to report that those changes passed, but not without some opposition and pushback from a handful of states. And so some of the advocacy that our Kansas delegation did in the small group meetings, I think, was helpful in moving that issue forward and making sure that it got the support of the delegation as a whole. The NSBA has adopted an equity statement that largely aligns with the equity work that we're doing in our district, and it's really great to see that leadership at the national level, and I think there are conversations ongoing within our state association now about how we can incorporate that equity work into more explicitly into the state association's work. In addition to doing the delegate assembly work, I attended a whole lot of really great presentations on Saturday, Sunday, and this morning on a variety of topics, including the value of early childhood education and digital resources in closing the achievement gap, how to move a high-performing district toward greater student achievement, using evidence measures and data sources for effective superintendent evaluations, digital software for digital board meeting and strategic planning management, building a high-performance board team, superintendent and board leadership strategies to support student achievement, and developing a healthy communication and working environment between board and superintendent. So they had strands on a whole lot of different things, and it was really hard to choose what to go to. I hope that as a board we can consider actually having other board members go to this in the go to the state association convention in December, and then also the national convention next spring, which is going to be in Philadelphia. I think it would be, my experience this weekend was that it was very worthwhile. So with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Stubblefield for the superintendent's report.
Good evening. We announced today, and the board would consider approving it as a part of the personnel report, and tonight's the selection of Dr. Michael Kuntz as the new principal at Quail Run Elementary. Dr. Kuntz is here tonight. He has extensive experience with the school improvement process as the Director of Learning Services for Greenbush, the Service Center, a center's liaison to Kansas Educational Organization, and is a former principal, assistant principal, and assistant principal at Turner Middle School in KCK, and a teacher, and he's a former teacher at Gardner Edgerton High School. Dr. Kuntz serves on the KSDE Kansas Redesign crew, so he'll join us with a wealth of knowledge. He and his wife, Allison, have children attending Quail Run, and Michael has chaired the Quail Run School Site Council the past 3 years. So thank you for all your service, and we look forward to working with you. Our schools will share with parents, but I also want to reiterate our plan is related to the April 20th National Walkout Day. Students' absences will again be excused. We will ask parents to use the regular absence reporting procedure should their student plan to miss more than 17 minutes. We encourage families to discuss this decision with your students at home. If families have children who are turning 5 on or before August 31st, we encourage them to contact their neighborhood elementary school about our kindergarten orientation. Those are occurring this month and into early May. Congratulations to the Lawrence and Community Transition Program students for bringing home medals from the Job Olympics at Johnson County College last week. The C-Tran also earned the overall first place trophy among the transition programs. So congratulations to our C-Tran students and the staff who prepared them. Cans for the Community has a goal to recycle 5,000 cans in April. All proceeds from the collection of cans will be donated to our elementary schools, so please look for the can houses around town. The Chamber will host Dr. Anthony Lewis for a luncheon speech tomorrow at noon at the Artera Event Gallery. I invite the board, staff, and community to the Ed Talks Research Teaching Festival that we are co-hosting with KU School of Education on April 19th from 7 to 9 p.m. In room 150 at KU. And lastly, the Lawrence Schools Foundation is selling tickets for one of its major fundraisers. Go to the foundation office or its website for tickets to the 28th Annual Foundation's Folly on April 28th at Liberty Hall. And lastly, I just want to briefly address, I want to thank the Free State student who reported the safety concern today. Safety and security is one of our top priorities. We share as much information as we can with the general public. We continue to evaluate our process and our procedures to keep our students safe, and we will continue to update and communicate with parents as we adapt and adjust. In this time, as our world changes, we will adapt and adjust. So I really appreciate all the support from our staff, students, and our parents, and I just want to continue to reiterate our communication and communication to us is the best way to keep our students safe, and we'll continue to be proactive and inform as much as we can. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Stubblefield. Our next item is patron commentary. I need a moment, please. Okay, so we have one patron commentary this evening, Mr. Steve Cadu on the Billy Mills, I believe on the item that's on our consent agenda, correct? Yes, please come to the microphone, Mr. Cadu, thank you. While you're walking up there, I will read our audience participation policy. Pursuant to Board Policy BCBI, the USD 497 Board of Education welcomes patron comments and thanks you for taking time to talk to us about our policies and procedures. We set aside this time during our regular meetings to hear from the public. This is your time to share opinions. However, complaints about specific staff or students will be heard by the board in executive session in order to protect the privacy of the individuals to be discussed. While you are not required to share your contact information, we ask that you do so that we can follow up with any specific concerns you may have. Please limit your comments to 5 minutes, and thank you for being here.
Thank you for the agenda time. We've probably at a point where, you know, I guess it's planning and a lot of and clarification is from my perspective. There's a memo, I guess, to the Board of Education from Dr. Stubblefield, from Keith Jones and Kathy Johnson that gives some description about the Billy Mills and the cost issues. A lot of this pertains to community fundraising for some items. What are is this to be considered a cost analysis, if you will, of the Billy Mills school change issue? Is that what this is?
So I think I can clarify, and maybe that would help us. I think this agenda item is solely to create a financial vehicle within the district so that as we start having these conversations, we're able to accept donations and have a specific fund for them. But we have not yet done the work of re-engaging with the community to do the planning for what's gonna happen. So that's something. In fact, I had plan to have a conversation with Dr. Stubblefield and at our next board officer meeting about that process, and we just have not done that. I think that's now is the time to start doing that. So we will be working toward that.
Yeah, the memo talks about minor and major expenditures. I would really like clarification on what the school district, what do they feel, or what will they provide in the Billy Mills total cost issue? Do you know that yet?
So I think what we need to do is, we will have an opportunity to discuss with Dr. Stubblefield and communicate, get some information together and communicate back to you about the issue.
Does the school board believe that some of these costs can come out of the budget?
I was just going to say, the things that we typically pay for, uniforms, different signage that we will replace, those things, and I shouldn't probably speak for it, those are the things that we typically will replace, and that wouldn't be an expectation for the community to fundraise for it. I did just get all of the information for the cycles, like uniforms and some different things, and we're gathering it, but we haven't had an opportunity to sit down to talk about it so that we can communicate that to you all. What this is, because we were getting questions about where could people donate money if they wanted to donate, this is to create that space for money to be donated if there were other things outside of what we would pay for that wanted to occur. Or if someone wanted to accelerate the process of replacing some sort of uniforms, we can tell you the year that is scheduled to be replaced, and then whomever that is fundraising would have an option. So this is just the first step in creating that process, and we'll have a timeline of all the things that we would typically replace, and then if there are additional things that an outside source wanted to fundraise for, that's where we can have conversations around what that would look like. But there are things that the district would pay for naturally, yes.
We are very excited about the Billy Mills name change, and I think much of the community is, and we want to contribute and help at much of the financial costs that we can. And we're already beginning to approach the public, but the approach would be nationwide. And some of the questions are, well, what can the sponsors pay for, and what can't they, and what kind of recognition would they get? For example, the large, I'll go ahead and name the names, Nike or Adidas or someplace like that. How much recognition can they get for this kind of donation to the school district?
Sure.
I don't know.
So I think what needs to happen is that we need to, as board leadership, have a conversation about the information Dr. Stubblefield is mentioning, and then reach back out to your group and form a group that's going to really work on this issue going forward between now and when we would have our, when school starts next year, when the renovations will be going on. So that is the intention and has been the plan. We just haven't sat down to say, okay, this is how we're going to start that process to reengage. So we're definitely planning to do that.
We'll put it on, we'll make sure that we talk about it next week when we meet, so that we can reach back out and at least give you some
Right.
update on that.
Right.
Would it be ideal for them to send the questions that they're asking now so that it'll be easy to address?
I think that would be very helpful, so that we would have an idea of some of the initial things that we need to be prepared to respond to, and then we can set up a time to meet as a group, which is, I think, what needs to happen next.
We'll be happy to meet with Dr. Stubblefield or whoever you assign, but I really do now, I'm thinking from a citizen standpoint, that I think the school district, I'd really like to nail down, if you will, I'll use that term, nail down, what the school board, the school district will provide for in that total.
And we'll be prepared to answer that question when we have a chance to meet.
And I think that's the kind of goodwill, if you will, or that's an expression of the sentiment of the school district. I think you want to be as much as part of this or more than we do.
Absolutely. So we will be meeting early next week to talk about in our executive meeting, and then we will reach back out to you to start that process.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here tonight. Okay, thank you for that. Our next item on the agenda is board commentary. Nope, no
I
takers?
just want to reiterate the appreciation for the community came out during our conversation. Definitely shed some new perspective. We don't know what we don't know, so just hearing from different community members, it was a pretty interesting event. So thank you for coming out.
I felt like we had a good turnout for that event and a good opportunity to talk about quite a few different issues. So thank you to all the board members for making the time to be there as well. And staff, we had quite a few staff there, and I know that is very much appreciated both by us and by the community. Okay, all right, we will move on then to our consent agenda. Consent agenda items are those that are considered routine and are adopted by one motion unless any board member or the superintendent requests that an item be removed. The item or items removed are voted on separately, and I know that we have some retirements to recognize this evening.
We do, and we also need to amend the personnel recommendations. So the first thing I'm going to do is move that we amend the personnel enclosure to accept the resignation of Aaron Bohr. Currently, it's listed under terminated, and it needs to be under resigned.
Second.
Okay, so probably what we need to do is move adoption of the items listed on the consent agenda with an amendment to the
Dave wrote.
personnel recommendation.
We just need to amend the personnel recommendation, and we just need to vote.
Personnel and then adopt the consent agenda.
Okay, which we will do.
Okay, so do we need two separate motions for that then? Okay, so
Which
you
we'll do
made
this-
the motion to amend the,
And I'll make the motion for the consent agenda.
gotcha. Okay, so
We have a second.
all in favor of amending the personnel report?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you.
Yep. And then we would like to thank the following people for their service to the school district. Diane Spicer, who served 14 years with our school district. Most recently at Centennial with Principal Adult Learning, so thank you, Diane. Roberta Woolard for 28 years of service as an ESL teacher. Barbara Dunlap at 29 years of service as a registrar. Daryl Newson, who was a para job coach for 5 years, and Constance Yother for 34 years as an administrative assistant. Thank you all for your service to Lawrence Public Schools. And with that, I approve that we move the consent agenda, or approve this consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor? Oh, wait,
No?
this is a roll call.
This is a roll call.
Ross,
Yes.
Ingram,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Kimball,
Yes.
Beeson,
Yes.
Fincher.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
I need extra help to keep things straight tonight. All right. Okay, we are ready to move on to our report this evening, which is a budget update with Kathy Johnson, our Executive Director of Finance.
Okay, so tonight we're going to do a report, kind of a budget planning update, kind of lay some groundwork for working through as the legislature makes decisions and hopefully the court makes decisions, that we have done some work preliminarily so that we can kind of know where we want to be and get ready to pull the trigger when it's time. And if there's anything that we need to do ahead of time, you know, we can talk about that too. So go through a few little things, and you can stop me, ask questions, and we'll have time for discussion and hopefully some interaction to help with going forward to just a reminder here at the beginning is just kind of that timeline of what the current year budget impact is. And the reason that this is important is because beginning in 1819, the budget for 1819 is based on this year's enrollment, where in the past, it's been based on the enrollment of the kind of year that's happening. It's actually now based on the audited enrollment from the year before. So it's kind of important to know what that timeline is for the current year. So just a quick reminder of that and kind of the audited information. We're in that time frame where, for the most part, it's been audited, like we talked about in March, and we're able to project from that. But we'll have some final tweaking to whatever that legal max amount is clear up until June. But the enrollment information, for the most part, is done. The next piece of this is kind of over the weekend. They did had a House bill, a Senate bill out there. There was something decided, and at the time of this, I didn't have details. 6 o'clock, it looks like that Dale Dennis posted a printout, but apparently there's a technical thing. So there's what they approved and what they intended to approve as printouts out there. So there's really still not a final, this may be what it looks like, that they'll have to discuss that technicality April 26th. So we're still kind of unsure, but there was what they actually passed versus what they thought they intended to pass. So
Kathy, can you provide, because this is the first time hearing about this, what is the issue?
They didn't say anything other than there was a technical issue. So he ran a run of both. And we would prefer what they intended versus the technical. So I don't have enough information. I was trying to read it on my phone. So we'll get some more information. But tonight it's kind of based on a combination of those two bills that they were discussing. And again, this is sort of an evolution of what's going to happen as they continue to work that out. Oral arguments are scheduled for May 22nd, and the court says that they hope to have a decision by June 30th. So we kind of at least are getting some direction of maybe where they're headed, but again, officially, we won't know anything till the court signs off on it. So we're trying to get prepared to pull that trigger. June 30 is our year end, and we need to publish budget for 18-19 by the 23rd and have the hearing and approval by August 13th. So as they continue to push our thing to June 30, then it just continues to shorten our timeline. So we want to keep you apprised and kind of take an opportunity at each board meeting to just kind of build on that so that we're able to pull that trigger. So just a reminder, if we were looking at current law before these bills that they've presented, current law would indicate, as we talked about in March 12th meeting, about $1.7 million for us in new revenue. And that was just based on what was already in the law and scheduled to be the increase for the current year. Due to the court ruling that was still inadequate and inequitable, that's where we are as far as what they're trying to make decisions on. If I look at that $1.7 million as new funding and kind of look at the two different bills that were out there, the House bill, the Senate bill, and then kind of related LOB, I just kind of have an incremental differentiation. So current law, if they went with the Senate bill, there was an increase related to the base state aid, but then there was some weightings that they took away. So that kind of actually increased our current about 764 to this 2.5 per the printout. If we were to look at the House bill, there was an increase of base state aid and some weightings also went along, and that would kind of incrementally get us to this 3.5 per the printout that was given to us. What they don't show in the printouts is our 33% LOB, so I kind of just put those incremental amounts there. What that would tell us, though, basically, is our range of new funding is probably about that $1.7 million up to $4 million, and then I'm not sure based on what actually kind of has come out, whether that will go up or down or where that might look. But just for conversation tonight, we're going to talk about, you know, kind of that $1.7 to $4 million kind of range for new money. Again, final details are still pending, and we'll just have to kind of, you know, work with it. This won't, you know, there's a good chance it won't be what they gave us last year in new funding, because that was a big jump from nothing to trying to catch up, and that was about a $6.1 million jump. I wouldn't anticipate that we'll get up to that amount, but, you know, $4 million is a significant increase versus what might have been just the 1.7 or incremental. And the beauty of what they're trying to do is a 5-year phase-in. So even though maybe we can't do everything we want to this year, maybe there's some things on the list we need to, phase in, we know we can do that, because once they get it passed, it'll be the next 5 years, here's what you can kind of plan for, which will help us strategically try to plan. So positives are coming out of it, and we'll just hopefully make strides to where we want to get in the end. So one of the things that we know is also something that we haven't dealt with completely as a district, and that is our deficit spending. So we've done a lot with cash balances. We've caught up some because our deficit spending started out to be $5.5 million. If we looked at where we're tentatively at right now, and you look at what our budgeted amount is, what our expenditures are in total, and this is our legal max, we're kind of over that. Take in some revenues that we also can count towards offsetting that, and we're looking at about this $2.83 million kind of mark as where our deficit spending is. So we've brought it down, but last year a lot of money went towards wages and benefits, and a little bit less towards deficit, knowing that hopefully the courts are doing something and we can kind of squeeze this down. So one of the things we really do need to consider is we've got to deal with some of that deficit spending. Our contingency reserve went down a couple $1 million last year to this 3.6. If we have to absorb it all in deficit spending, we're down to no contingency reserve. So figuring out how to balance that in the scope of things and stretch that again so that we're able to get something in that fund and deal with something if it were to happen, we would want to make sure that we can do that. So that's part of something that we need to discuss as far as what is that amount that we're willing to do in the scope of all of this, and how do we start phasing that back so that we're at that zero instead of deficit spending, because our cash balances have gone down significantly. Our reserve is now being impacted, and I don't think any of us like to function personally without a little bit of a savings, and the district would be the same way. So we need to think about that. If you remember then from kind of the meeting on the 12th, we kind of look at this addition and subtraction page. Obviously, the salary package information is something that is always part of a discussion. The part in the blue at the top, these are kind of things that are kind of above the line we've kind of already had to deal with. So the blue up at the top are things that are needed to be done to meet the ratios that already exist. So just to do what we always do with staffing ratios, elementary, middle, high school, CTE, et cetera, those are just to maintain. So there's a slight increase there. Next group are things in orange that we did mid-year in 17-18. So if we want to continue them going forward, we're going to have to budget for them. They kind of come off the top. Otherwise, they're unfunded. So that's the orange. The next kind of whatever color this is, mauve or pink or something, these are things that were done, but they were offset by something. So elementary guidance, we agreed to move ahead with 3, but it was offset by the contingency for elementary, taking it down from 10 to 3. Avid, there was a need to go ahead and make that happen in the scheduling. Middle school agreed to offset that 4/10 for Avid to move ahead and try to get that hired and in the schedule, so their contingency was reduced. Again, net effect is 0, but to make the timing of some of this work, that was decided in some of their staffing. And then the high schools were very strongly felt that they needed to do something with a social worker out of general fund, not special education, and they're willing to offset that currently to kind of move ahead out of the high school contingency. Again, the net effect of those budget-wise is 0, but their contingency FTE to deal with class size, et cetera, is smaller than it would be if we funded that outside of that. The bottom part is some things that have surfaced, or not surfaced, but have again, this is kind of a living, breathing, everything keeps moving, even though we don't get decisions from the state till late. But there's some resignations, some different things that have happened in structure, and so based on those kind of changes, the net savings to this section is about $60,000, but in order to manage staffing-wise some of the things that are happening as a result of that's sort of the ins and outs of all of that. And again, kind of above the line, it actually has a net savings of about $60,000 that we were then able to put in. And so off the top, This was a little bit of a higher number if you go back to March, so because of that bottom section, it's actually 233,000 is kind of off the top, already committed to the 1.7, or if that range is 4, then that difference. Does that kind of make sense so far?
Okay, can you say that again?
If you looked at 1.7 as new funding, I shouldn't say 1.7. So basically, the adds here are the 1.1, savings are the 676. So the net cost is 233. And if we take the high end of $4 million as kind of our top point, that would leave $3,848,000 to work with.
Okay, so basically what you're saying is that of the stuff that we've already
That's already kind of
committed
happened.
to, we've got it covered except for that 233,000.
So that's going against any new money.
All right, thank you.
At this point, yes. And a lot of that is related to just maintaining your ratios, just kind of dealing with those, plus the things that you added mid-year this year, positions and some things that, so that's really where the majority of all that is coming from. And most of the rest of it either was a net savings in the pink and the gray, was a net savings, the other was a net neutral 0. So it really is coming from those top things that were part of just what you've already got in place as class size or hired mid-year and we need to maintain. Does that make sense then?
Yes, thank you.
So kind of moving along. So the next thing was, of those kinds of things, there are budget considerations and things that staff have an interest in having considered as an add to the budget. Fortunately, we're in that mode where we're looking at some of those things are adds and not cuts, which makes it a little bit easier, but then it almost makes it harder. So we'll talk through that a little bit. So budget considerations, we had asked staff to submit things, additions or reductions by March 15th, and that we would set some time to review those and kind of discuss those and lay some groundwork for those. Each of the requests was kind of what the consideration is, add or minus a board goal that it might be related to, try to describe a current situation, who's going to be affected, what the dollar cost is if it's staffing, and if there is any kind of a domino effect, what do we need to consider as far as if we do it, what else might be affected. So the next few slides are not in any priority order. They're really more just grouped to go through with you kind of briefly by the function area that the state would categorize these, instruction, student support, that kind of thing. So I'm just going to kind of go through them. I won't spend a whole lot of time. You've seen some of the detail that was submitted to go along with them. And so we'll kind of walk through this just a little bit. So there's kind of that first block of information that's related to wages and benefits. And we now know what that health insurance or that fringe increase is. Just to renew what we currently have, that is a cost to us of about $1 million. So we do know what that increase is. And that would be to continue funding a single premium for full-time people and doing just exactly what we do currently. Then there was a group of requests or things that were considered that are what we would call direct classroom instruction type things, lowering class size, reinstating some of the contingencies, things that would fall into that function category of 1,000 for the state. Now there's a few things that are also falling into the 1,000, but we're special education. And so what happens with special education and why there's a number over here is with every 1.0 teacher that we get, we also get categorical aid of $28,250 for that same FTE. So the net impact to the district is kind of that net number. If we add the teacher, we know we'll get the CAT aid. If we don't add the teacher, we don't get the CAT aid. But they kind of go hand in hand. So the net, we kind of show it on both sides in order to see the whole picture. This is also one that it was sent in or submitted as 9. And it could be, as we look at future priority settings and things like that, that maybe we want to increment it in groups of 2 or something like that. And so maybe we can't do all 9 at once, but we do 2 over the next few years. As we know, we have money, maybe it's 3, and maybe we do it in increments. And so that's something we can consider as we look at it on a future priority setting, maybe doing it in increments or phasing it in if we can't do all 9 at once, so that something is going towards the classroom in that area. The other request that would be classroom would be the deaf, hard of hearing teacher. Moving along, we had kind of a group of things that were parents as teachers. They did provide it in kind of phases, phase 1, 2, and 3 kind of levels of what they would like for funding, all 3 together, or 1 and 2, or 1, 2, and 3. Student support, there's a section on nursing. One was to bring back the rest of the nurse facilitator and a registered nurse. Student support, again, this is more into special education, but again, student support in speech language and audiology. And some student support, this restorative justice was just Liberty Memorial. One was the coordinator and one was, so it was just one middle school that requested this. The interventionist or student support was one for each middle school. The equity facilitator was a student support service position, as well as the student services facilitator for CI3T. Kind of continuing along, we had our curriculum or instructional support requests. And this again, you know, whether you did all in 1 year or considered splitting it in increments and phasing a couple in and a couple in, that would be an option. And then there's some instructional support of just kind of changing titles that would create kind of a net impact there, minimal, but that was that grouping. Library media assistance, increasing some hours there to help with the instructional support in the library. A request for a technology integration coach. Dean of students, the middle schools had a request for kind of a dean of students, one at each middle school. Then these were some additional kind of administrative requests and technology requests. This was a communication specialist in addition to the one that you did mid-year. Some change in some HR staff, and then 2 FTE for some IT techs. Kind of moving through, we had some facilities and operation requests for custodians, lead floater, preventive maintenance, locksmith, etc. Kind of a group here for security. There was security, this 4 at the middle schools was related to the security officer's pay level. If you were to actually look at it at an SRO level, like our SROs that the police provide at the high schools, it would run more, but that is an option that we could put as an option 2 or a different consideration, but you can see that there's a difference in the dollars. This is more just the security officer like they have at the high school. The SRO would be more of what like the police department provides. This is also where the ALICE training was listed for safety and security. And then this was some just restructuring of some titles, and the last one was deficit spending and what we would want to put there. So those were kind of the list. That was just a laundry list, and it was just sorted in order by kind of that function category. When you total it up, it's about $4,768,000 worth of requests. Doesn't include what we would want to put towards deficit spending, which we just talked about. So that's on top of all of those requests. And it doesn't say anything about salary compensation for our salary groups. It's just, those are those blanks that we still have there. So it's evident that there's obviously, we can't do everything. There's not enough money to do absolutely everything. So is there any consensus of where to focus money and in some sort of priority order? It's like, where do you start? There's just a lot here, and kind of where does it make sense to start? So through a priority exercise that we kind of had everybody participate in, results are combined by adding the rankings per line, and the total is then used to sort the priority to kind of get a blended. So it's not one opinion, 2 opinion, but sort of a blend of opinions, rankings, you know, feelings like where they want to focus some funds. And that kind of helps put different lenses, different takes. Where can we come together? Where are we way apart? Where do we need further discussion? So it's really just a vehicle to try to get some discussion on the table, get some idea of where people stand, and where you need more information, so that as we continue to build on this, we can come up with a solution that will be effective when we get ready to put some money to it. And so there were about 57 items that we prioritized. The result is not intended to be final. It is really just for a basis of discussion, so that we can build on that, provide information, those kinds of things. So the next few slides is actually a combination of the priority setting exercise that we had you do as a board and what the leadership team did. And so you'll see that kind of off to the side. I just combined those together. So there's a column for the boards, there's a column for the executive leadership team, and then a combination of those two numbers is kind of what it's sorted on. So it gives that further blend of what that looks like. And so some of the ones that maybe are different or ones you want to discuss further, we can talk through that. And then what I did on the next slides are really kind of the top third, the middle third, and the bottom third. So you can kind of see where that falls, and we can kind of have a discussion based on that. So it's the same things you just saw that were just purely by function, and these are now a little bit of a priority, but really not anything that's final. So don't take it like these have been decided. It's just to kind of give you a different look at it. So the top third items would be things over here. And so you can see, if somebody has a 1, somebody has a 50, somebody has a 20, it's just all added together. And you'll see that the board's total, the district executive leadership team, and then just adding those together, and then that's how it's sorted. This is that reference code, and this kind of is the descriptor. Over here, you remember we already have done 233. So if I add 233 to this 1,000,004, here's my running total, okay? So if you think about that 1,000,007 current law, you'd draw a line somewhere in there if you were literally doing this in priority order. 4 million takes you further down, but you don't have things filled in here. So as these numbers populate, it changes the number on the side, and it's going to shift things. Does that kind of make sense? So there's still holes. We still haven't got decisions, and we haven't decided where things finally need to land. But this is sort of that first blush to give you an idea. So health insurance, if we continue to keep health insurance for all employees like we currently have, it kind of rose to the top a little bit. You'll see then the compensations, which are the yellows, deficit spending. There's also some things in here for class size that were high priorities for people, safety and security. Some of the special education items, custodians, reinstating some contingency, things on this first page. And I think they're all things we've talked about. So it feels like it kind of gave a pretty good visual of where different factions have been talking, different discussions have been occurring. That doesn't mean we're all in agreement. You can kind of see that from the side, but you can see where some of that blends together. Any question on kind of just that first blush look? Does the process of trying to blend them together, does that make sense? Do you have any questions related to that? It's a lot to absorb. We're not asking for any decisions tonight. We're just trying to give you another layer of help.
I'm just curious from a mathematical standpoint, how many people make up the executive leadership team?
There's about 9.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
For the purpose of this exercise,
Yep.
Yeah. And obviously, as you add more people, it kind of helps balance that lens. So it's hard if, like I said, if it's 1 or 2 people, it's like, well, it's my opinion, your opinion. But as we blend those lenses and those different things that are important to us, it kind of brings it together in some sort of a little bit more of a weighted or balanced view. Any kind of questions there? And I'll kind of flip back to this. Because I think some of this you'll probably want to take home and absorb. The second one is kind of the middle. This is the stuff that kind of ended up in the middle. And it's still instructional support. There's still some different things through there that we've talked about. So those will be things that something could get moved up, something could get moved down. The next time you do this exercise, you may have a different take on it or a lens on it. And so we'll kind of discuss. And then there's the stuff that's sort of the bottom third. And it may be, as you see, we're getting up to dollar amounts that may be unrealistic, especially when you start adding salaries and some things like that, that maybe these just drop off for now. That doesn't mean they don't get brought up, a year from now, or there may be 1 or 2 things on here that you feel strongly about and need to move up. And there may be something that we can move down. And again, through further priority exercises, we can kind of decide what that might look like. There are some things then at the end that and then we can open it up for discussion and questions. So some of the things to think about, are there items that can be dropped? That just means the next time you do the priority exercises, there's fewer things to have to focus on. Instead of 57, it's maybe 40. Are there things that you want to go ahead with? Even though you don't know final funding, is there something on that list that's important to move ahead with because of a staffing reason or something? Because we are going to get past our hiring season. Remembering that anything that is officially committed to and moved above the line takes away from decisions later. So those are things that you need to think about. And what additional information about any of the budget kinds of items on here would help you as the board before we did another priority exercise or had some final decisions, that we can help provide you more information in order to make a good educated decision on where you want to go and what you want to do. So that's kind of the purpose of this. And so now it's really just opening it up to have a dialogue, discussion, share amongst yourselves, or there are some staff here if you have questions with anything in particular that we can circle back around on. So.
Okay. Just for the board's information and staff, I looked to see if there's any discussion or information. Apparently this news about the error in the bill broke at about 6:50 tonight. So the article on the Capitol Journal Online says that there is an error in the bill that was passed that is tied to the way that local option budgets are calculated as a portion of the state aid. The plan was supposed to add about $525 million in funding over the next 5 years, but failed to include some funding for the upcoming school year that was added in legislation passed last year. It's an $80 million difference. So some of the impacts of that, and this article doesn't mention Lawrence, but for example, some other information says Shawnee Mission and Blue Valley go from a net plus to losing money. Olathe goes from getting $10 million in new money to getting $5 million in new money. So this is
our differential in the between the two was 2.2.
2.2 million. It's a big deal.
It's
a really big deal.
Yeah.
And it's a big deal. I don't know how closely everybody got to follow what happened during the debate and how that all played out, but I have some anxiety that if they have to go back on April 26th to make a, quote, technical correction, that there will be people who want to take advantage of that as an opportunity to drastically change what was passed. So this introduces a great deal of uncertainty into this conversation that, as of, earlier today, I thought maybe had been put to rest. It was very unfortunate.
Very late hour
Yes.
issue.
Well, that, let's just be honest, the way that played out was not it was the opposite of a master class in leadership skills. So, so that makes this exercise really difficult in terms of committing to hiring for next year.
So I think for tonight, that is for discussion, but, and I hear what you're saying. The only thing that I would like some clarification on, at the last meeting, the board approved to advertise for the CI3T and the equity facilitator. And we posted it, have not interviewed, have not done anything with those two positions. So as long as it's not a commitment or a motion to move it above and subtract that, we won't be able to move forward with that. And I just wanted to be clear on that after the community conversation, because people may be waiting or thinking that we're delaying or not moving, but we didn't have authority to do that. So I just wanted to be clear on those two, because they did come up at the community conversation specifically. And we have posted it, have applicants, but have not done anything else because there's no funding committed to it.
They are on the top third, so they did surface to that.
So I do have a question.
Sure.
About the priorities. So I'm surprised that some of the items that relate to some of the safety discussions we've had did not end up in the top tier. So
The Alice training is
the
there.
Alice training is, but the
Right,
staffing
but
is
some of the others
not.
are not. Mhm.
The staffing specifically for like a director of safety?
Or the additional resource officers, right?
So SROs are a little different in the sense that there's a grant out there that you can apply for, and that's how I think in the past, somebody can correct me if I was wrong, when we had SROs in our middle schools, that's how they were funded in the past. So that's not been something that we've directly paid for. That doesn't mean that that's not, but as individuals prioritize, that's how it came out. But there can be discussion, and that would be specifically for the middle schools, because right now they're at the high schools and they go back and forth to the middle schools as needed.
And there's also a pretty big difference in priority weighting between the board and administration on the issue of whether we need an additional staff person for the life safety supervisor. So I guess that maybe we just want some perspective about that.
Well, one of the options we have, because the question came up around the life safety supervisor, around examining what our current staff does. So one of the things that, as a staff internally, that we talked about is consulting with law enforcement, retired law enforcement, to look at and analyze our current safety plans, to get their lens on it, to flush out what we're currently doing, to determine if it is something that we needed. So we could move forward with that, because if it's more than $20,000, obviously we'll come here for board action, but we can start this school year looking at that, and then maybe come back late July, August to continue to contract with someone or consult, whichever one that makes sense, as we reach out to determine if that is a permanent position or is it just something on a temporary basis that we just need an outside expertise on. And then from there, we will be able to give a more informed decision
That makes
around adding the position, or saying, based off of our contract consultation, we put these things in place, we have personnel in place that can do it. Or if they come in with the lens and we just don't have those expertise, then we can make the recommendation maybe a year from now to say, we've thoroughly flushed this out and here's why we need this person.
So I'll be honest, when I ranked it, I was thinking that that position would be the person doing the work that you just described. It from what you said, that's actually not necessarily, doing one thing isn't tied to the other necessarily.
For,
Doing the evaluation.
oh, we can contract, like there, I mean, for example, in our IT department right now, we are contracting with someone to help us analyze and look at, we can do that if it gets to a threshold where we have to, I mean, we, for the remainder of the year, may not hit the threshold, but if we look and say next year, we would come and ask for board approval for the contract like we normally do. But that'll give us an opportunity to analyze, look at what we're doing based off our staffing, and if it's discovered that our current staff can't necessarily do it with where we should be in regards to safety and security on an ongoing basis, then we can come back to the board with a recommendation after that.
So other big areas where we seem to be on different pages is the curriculum facilitators and the interventionist. So so I heard you say that that could be something that was sort of one or two a year or something like that could be kind of added in. Can we talk a little bit about what is the interventionist? I'm not sure I know what that is.
So the middle school staff have shared prior to this year, but specifically this year, with the demands of just trying to be proactive and provide support to students, they asked for a dean and an interventionist, and as we had discussions around it, depending on if you look at a typical dean that dealt with discipline, the other one came as being more proactive around, they can provide some support to the office staff. This will be a person that could be proactive, have small group meetings with students. In the case like at Central, if they're employing restorative justice, this person may be the person that is trained in that, but implement like some of the proactive components of the CI3T model that honestly, with 2 individuals at our middle schools, we can do a better job. But if you add a 3rd person that had intentionality around that to help intercept some of those discipline actions, discipline things that occur, I think was the thought process behind it.
And that's an interventionist, not the dean.
Yeah, we would probably not actually call it an interventionist because I think it would be confusing because we have interventionists that are elementary schools that do small class instruction, but that's when we looked at their rationales, what they were kind of looking at.
So is
Yeah.
that something that you could, are there schools that are in maybe a zone that needs that now versus we could roll into more next year? Or is that something kind of do all 4 at the same time?
Well, a couple of options that we could do. I would say if we did it, we would want it at all 4, but that doesn't mean that 2 couldn't be split like halftime between the 4 schools, and then based off that, you can increase it to full-time based off of what happens beyond that. But yeah.
How would lowering the class sizes, because that's another one, in middle school, would that kind of help? So the need for,
Well, I don't think it would address the proactiveness of
the proactive.
planning, like meeting with students, checking in on students, being proactive around implementing students, whatever behavior supports that they may need that, that they're not getting right now outside of students, identify students, just it's more being proactive in implementing our CI3T model. It honestly could go hand in hand with the CI3T facilitator. They would have a point of contact to make sure those mental health supports, those check-ins and those things are happening around a lot of the data collection, that kind of support to the office staff.
For me, that piece resonated with me. I think it would get at, when the community is talking about restorative justice, restorative practices, which is something that I have some professional experience with, this provides a framework for that in a pretty meaningful way, where you could have someone who's facilitating that type of practice without necessarily, the philosophy could exist within the whole building, but this person could be implementing it in a meaningful way, as opposed to this expectation that we would have this separate restorative justice model that everyone had to engage in and be part of, and there would be like a peer council and all. There's lots of different components of that. The essence of that work could be done by that person, and I think that's the way I interpreted it. Yeah, it would move. It would somebody with a position of authority could move that philosophy forward, and we could move from a disciplinary action to an intervention.
And you're still talking about the same position?
Interventionist, yes.
Okay.
I'm thrown off a little bit too.
I think the other thing that might help is one is under instruction and one is under student support. And student support is your social, emotional support of a student, and the instruction is the academic classroom instruction. So that differentiation is really the category of difference between the two.
And when we talk about the curriculum facilitators, we've been going round and round about the need to look at and assess all of our curriculum, right? And so those positions are going to be pretty much mandatory to get that work done. Am I right in thinking that?
Yeah. So after talking to, and Jerry, if I misspeak, you can come to the front. After talking with Jerry and Jennifer, they do believe if it's not money to do all 4, if we start with 2, that is some, and then we can tap into some of our teacher leaders, but you'll have some people that can help facilitate and point people. So if it's not 4, we talked about phasing in maybe 2 and then examining it and moving forward with that.
So I think, like, what would be helpful for me as the next look at this would be to have kind of broken out those things where there's real strong agreement between the board and executive leadership team on them being ads. And then that group of things where executive leadership really highly valued it, but it didn't rise to the top for the board, so we could talk about, and then also vice versa, like break them out that way so that we could talk about, really intentionally talk about those differences and decide which ones move up into that tier of, okay, everybody agreed on this. We were in pretty different places. The other thing is, there's a lot of positions in support service positions in here, and just knowing that that the possibility may be that we have a lot less new money than we have thought we were going to have. Prioritizing within that top tier, prioritizing the order in which staff feels like if we can't do 5 positions because we're only going to get $1.7 million, what's the one position that's the most important to do now versus next year or the year after? That would be my thought. And I'm going to stop talking so other board members can chime in. Kelly.
I have 2 clarifying questions, and they're not really related. Back to the curriculum position. One of the things I heard from teachers was that there would be a change in the curriculum, and then there wasn't quite enough support for implementation. That is what the facilitators would be doing, right? They would be helping with the implementation, or did I miss?
Yeah, that would be a part of their ongoing
Okay.
roles and responsibilities.
And so that would be responsive to the teachers in terms of the feedback that they've given to us around
Yes.
curriculum implementation, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And somewhat related to that, and just sort of echoing what Shannon said, it really would, I appreciate that we separated out, where the board was at versus where the executive team is at. And I'm really looking forward to hearing the context behind what we missed, like where we had a misinterpretation. If you all can explain to us why you think it would be critical and where we missed the mark, perhaps, just of the pieces that we don't know of the puzzle, I guess. So that would be helpful, and I'm wondering how much time we have to do that. Like for some of these positions, it seems like you would want to be advertising for them now.
Yes.
So how long do we have to really have this conversation?
So our next board meeting is April 23rd, and how you want it sorted, Kathy can do it for all of us and get it to you as soon as possible. I don't want to speak for how quickly she can get it to us, but we can send that. But I would say, depending on where we are April 23rd, the problem is they're not going to address the technical component until then. So all of those positions are teaching positions. We would be late, and I would say for all of them, and not that we would limit it to internal, but I do know we would have strong internal candidates because they have contacted us and for just asking about questions. It would end up being a domino effect, not to say that it's any different than we hire as late as May, June, but the further you go out, the less quality the pool is, but that's reality. And if you look at, like, if you take into account the equity facilitator, the CI3T facilitator, the curriculum facilitator, if you were going to do all 4 of those, that's 6 positions. And that's not to say that everyone who would apply and want to be in those positions are like in the classroom, but it'll be a domino effect.
Okay.
So I have another question about the deficit spending, and if that's something that we need to do at 2.8. I mean, is that something we need to do what we have here, or can we do something, again, kind of over time and lessen that amount?
I think you need to minimize that it can continue over time for the next, 5 years, because we're down to cash balances being a concern in a couple of places.
So the answer is, we need to fix it.
We need to
or
fix it.
Mostly fix it this year.
Or over the next 2,
Okay.
thinking about splitting it in half, maybe. It pushes it. Hopefully something comes through with some positiveness. If we can underspend in some areas, that, it always kind of continues to help that. We do still have some contingency. It's just, as we talked about, like the dark store theory, or just any of those things that could happen to us mid-year that are unexpected, the worse, the lower our contingency is, or the closer it gets to zero, doesn't give us flexibility when that emergency happens. So, I guess I would say at least look at half, maybe, as kind of that, and that can tweak a little bit as we get closer to the year end and we know more what that looks like. But going in, if we at least start there as that holding, that at least kind of lets us know where that other things fall, and then we can kind of continue to work towards. But I do think we need to do more versus less, because we've been putting off the more for a couple of years now.
Has the formula changed in the discussions, or is it just the funding amount?
As far as the error,
I don't know.
the error is how much money they put in to fund it. They did make some changes to the formula itself, and I can't fully explain to you what all of those are. There were, at the very last minute, to try to get the Senate's support, they subtracted some money, and I think it turns out to be about $7 per pupil. This is what I saw estimated. About $7 per pupil from base state aid, and put it into a couple of specialized things, policy-wise, that the Senate wanted. And I'm trying to remember off the top of it, there was a whole list of policy things that the Senate was really pushing for, and I can't remember which. There were only 2 or 3 that made it into the final bill. But it did reduce base state aid, but then they were putting that money towards specific things. Maybe Kathy has.
This is what they intended to approve. And this is changing the base state aid. So I don't know if you can see this or not. Let me see if I can. If I can do a normal. That at all? So the base state aid currently is this. They moved it to $4,900 for 18-19. They did some things with special education, college and career, the bilingual weighting, and some different things here. And I have not read this, but if you go out to ksde.org and you go into what's new, they have both printouts, the intended versus what they passed. And they also have what I just looked up, that's the major provisions of that. And I have not looked at this in detail, so I'd be reading line by line with you to try to figure out what they're trying to tell us. But they have posted that out there, and they did it late in the evening here. So I think all of us are going to look forward to KASB analyzing it, and Dale Dennis's office, and we'll just continue to, over the next probably week to 10 days, up until they go back the 26th for the technical fix, just get a better understanding of what it exactly means to us. And I'm sure there could be more than just this one technical fix that pops out as, oh, did they really mean that or not? Because there's always that. But that information is out there, and so it does give you an idea of, as Shannon said, they agreed to this or maybe didn't agree to this. It does look like they put some, funds into
it was
all that risk, and they did some things with special education as far as things that they intended to do to help with some funding, some teacher mentor, so those kinds of things. So they do have some things. How they'll disperse that to districts will be something that'll continue to evolve.
Kathy, can you go back to the screen before that? There are a couple of policy things that I wonder how they're going to impact us specifically, and that would be, I can't remember if we are paying any utilities or insurance out of our capital outlay. We are not, so that doesn't impact us. That's good. What about this piece about requiring a proportionate share of at-risk funding in the LOB.
And that kind of goes back to what do they do with the best practices they'll allow us to use at-risk funding, because it will require us to take a portion of our LOB on top of what they're having us do in general fund and increase at-risk by that. That may be okay if they open some of the abilities that we can do with at-risk funding. They say it's okay for support, but yet they force us to show it's on direct instruction. So when you want to do something with guidance or social worker, that sounds like that should help with that risk, but the way it's sort of outlined in the guidelines, it doesn't really work that way. It's only the portion that's direct instruction with that specific at-risk child. It's not kind of general. So it doesn't really let you fund 100% of somebody out of those funds. It's kind of split based on serving the at-risk kids versus not serving the at-risk kids. So there's that accountability, time and effort kind of thing that has to go along with it. And that just kind of makes it complicated. So depends on what they do with those guidelines as to what we'll have the ability to use those funds for and how to disperse them. So sometimes it's nice that they give it to us, but then they put so many strings on it, it makes it really difficult to make it very effective in what we need to do. So we'll just have to continue to watch and see what we can learn. But this information is out there late in the day, so it may help you with some of the provisions.
Kelly?
So I don't know, I'm not sure if you can answer this, but I'm just wondering, so the reporting to the court has to happen by April 28th or something like that?
So the briefs are due April 30th.
Yeah.
They are not supposed to come back for the veto session until April 26th.
Right.
And I have some question, because I'm not well-versed in legislative procedure. The big, the game of chicken that happened over the adjournment resolution had to do with the difference in the House and Senate resolution, where the Senate usually, there's 20 days between the veto session and sine die, which is the final day of the session. I think, if I understand it correctly, and if somebody in the room knows differently, please tell me. I think that the Senate resolution, which is the one that the House eventually ended up passing with 30 seconds to spare, said that those two things both happen on April 26th.
That's what I think.
So that causes me to have some question as to if they go back and they're trying to make a, quote, technical fix to this bill, if we're going to end up in the same kind of crazy situation that we had this past weekend. So,
because they can't. Okay, this all.
Yeah,
they can't call a special session at this point, correct?
Not until after. David, I'm going to look at you, and you can nod your head. They can't call a special session until after sine die, right? But they could after that. The problem is that the court expects their briefs to be filed by April 30.
Okay.
They've got oral arguments.
May 22nd, right? So that is why the Attorney General was literally begging the legislature to act on this before they adjourn this weekend, because you can't get enough lawyers together to prepare briefs for the Supreme Court and oral arguments with the kind of a shorter timeline than what they're really, not good ones anyway, really getting. So that's why there was so much urgency on the part of the state's lawyers to get them to make some sort of decision so they could create a case and brief it. So the problem is that we may not have any real resolution to this until June.
At the end of June, yeah, that's what I was just thinking. So, okay.
Hopefully we have some direction so that at least, like in last year, at least there was, well, you kind of know you're probably going to get at least this. They may not feel like it's adequate, but they're not going to go backwards on us, because the court's kind of always gone, nope, still more, nope, still more. So we may go into it with kind of that minimum. Current law is our minimum right now, because that's what exists until something else changes. So that's your $1.7 million. The others are just what they're proposing to kind of be law for next year, and that's the part that's kind of in question. But current law will exist until something new comes along. So that's that default, or the low end of the $1.7 million that we talked about.
So if we take just our required increase in fringe and half of our deficit spending, we've exceeded all of the new money that we're expecting to get, which means no new positions, if that's where it ends up.
So it's
Yeah.
again, this wasn't, you guys have had a long day, all kinds of fun things. So the intent was really not, again, for you to have a final decision unless there's something you really felt passionately that you were good to hang your hat on. Otherwise, I think we can go ahead and try to continue to fine tune and help you get the information you need and the clarifications you need where you need them. And we can circle back around at the next board meeting and have continued discussion till we get to a point where we sign off on something. So, but feel free to email any questions if you want more information about something, if you feel strongly about the way something has fallen out, or, you know, there may be things on that bottom three or bottom third that we just want to say we're done talking about, because for right now we just know we can't get there. There may be something on there that you want to move up, or something you want to move down, onesie, twosie kind of thing. And again, we can kind of get there, but then we don't have to reprioritize all of them again. We can just kind of focus on where we want to get. So
And I think in
that makes
addition to sort of maybe some of the justifications like Kelly was asking for, if I know this just adds more to your plate, but if you could kind of separate it out with kind of that multi-year approach, I think that might be helpful too,
Okay.
so that we can actually just see those numbers and the community can see those numbers.
Okay.
If
Yeah,
we're
we can
moving
kind of
towards something.
try to come up with a format that might help with that and maybe talk through that.
Okay, as a working number, can we would the board be supportive of plugging in 1.4 million on the deficit spending as our working number?
Which is what it currently is.
Well, no, it's approximately 2.8. 50% would be 1.4. She doesn't have Kathy doesn't have a number
A dollar in there yet.
in the
'cause
blue
it's like-
box because,
Scroll up. Gotcha.
It's the blue box and and we can plug that in. You know, you'll have to continue to think about, again, benefits and what you're doing with salaries and the rest of the requests. So it's just going to be a moving kind of document till we get.
I mean, I think 50% is a good starting point for us to.
Kind of gives you at least something to plug in there so you don't forget that it exists. And that you can,
okay, so let's do that, please. Do you want board members, if they have additional things that they want, say, you know, I don't want to keep talking about this, do you want them to send that to you or directly to Kathy?
Are you okay?
you can send it directly.
You can send
to
it
Kathy.
directly to Kathy.
I'll share with Anna whatever
Okay.
you send me. So,
Okay.
or you can copy her and send it.
Okay.
So.
Other thoughts or questions? Other than maybe legislators ought to put us in charge of their process so these mistakes don't get made, right? Let Kathy do their drafting so the numbers are right.
Well, nice if they can decide something and give us a visual for 5
Right.
years out, so we can it would just
Yeah.
really, that would just really be it. Something we haven't seen in a really long time.
Right. I will say, just from watching it and talking with people that have been working with the House, particularly Fred Patton, Representative Patton, who is a former state association president, tried very, very hard to shepherd this through in a positive way. And so I think there are some people that did a lot of good in that conversation. It's unfortunate that it kind of got pushed to the very last. In my opinion, it's unfortunate that it got pushed to the
60
last.
seconds left to for the vote to go, and your Senate has behaved like complete children. Then this is what happens. Here's
Right.
where we are at.
Yes, and thankfully not our senators from Douglas County. I think one thing I did, and if you hadn't thought about it already, sending a thank you note to our legislators that were supportive, as well as any other legislators that you feel might appreciate. I sent a note to Senator Givens, who is the one who just cast the deciding vote, to say thank you for having the courage to do that. I'm sure he's going to hear from other people who don't feel that way, but I think it's always nice to hear the positives. So, all right, anything else? Okay, thank you very much, Kathy. And with that, we are complete with our agenda, so motion to adjourn.
Second.
We adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.